Crazy Stupid Podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time watching, we'd love if you could hit that subscribe button, the like button, and that bell so that you're aware of when we post things.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Crazy Stupid Podcast. And, of course, we're going to talk about the latest episode of JJK, which, again, has left us distraught.
Not that much news going on.
The strike is over.
Yes. They got so much.
The writers' strike.
Yeah, WGA. They got so much, and all these. I'm stealing one of your mints. All these execs were like, "Oh, we can't afford this. You're asking for too much." Corny.
I hope that this starts a wave, and
Yes.
all these other labor unions on strike. I hope that this helps them get a win too.
That's what I'm hoping for. Set some precedent. Get some momentum going.
Because there's the auto workers, which is like the first strike that they've been on in forever.
But then there's the Starbucks, there's the Amazon one.
Mm-hmm. But they're trying to form their unions.
Oh, and then there's the VFX.
Mm-hmm. They also are not unionized.
But they just voted to do so. Be ready for less frequent Marvel content because they be exploiting the F out of those people.
It'll hopefully be better, though.
Yeah. It'll give them more time to complete a task.
Yeah.
You can't bully them into doing stuff like they kind of been doing before.
Yeah. The decision on the AI was interesting.
What do you mean?
They basically made us that like AI and writers' rooms coexist, but you can't use AI to completely replace a writer's room.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So like you can draft it. If you use AI to draft a script and you have writers come on to like edit that script because AI is not yet at a point where it can write like good scripts.
Right.
Then you have to give the writers full credit, etc. There was two things that I heard it was on Offline with Jon Favreau that they were talking about that could be some concerns in the future. One, they said that they are making these negotiations with AI as it exists right now, but AI, as we know, is quickly evolving. So there is a possible future where...
Like a loophole?
Not necessarily a loophole, but like right now the deal, from my understanding, is made under the assumption that AI is not going to write a quality script by itself. And so if they use it, they will use it and then ask the writers to come on and help. But the writers want to make sure if you do that, I am getting full credit as a writer. I am still getting a minimum pay and you're paying me as if I wrote the draft, even if I didn't, even if AI wrote it. But they're saying in the future, it is possible that AI will be able to come out with quality material and then they won't need writers. A. B, this was actually a more interesting thing to me, was this one person, whoever he was interviewing on the podcast, said that we are operating under the assumption that the opposition in this AI battle are the studios. But he's saying, what if it is the AI companies themselves? As in, what if ChatGPT or whatever the company behind it is decides to come out with their own material, like their own media? That could be a major threat.
Like almost creating a new branch in their business.
Right.
For studios.
Right. Like this, the way that like Apple TV was like, and now that Apple was like, and now we have Apple TV. We make movies and TV. That's happening a lot. Like that's not an uncommon thing right now for companies that previously were not in the business of making their own content to begin making their own content. Yeah. They're saying, what if that happens and that becomes the major competitor, and that's like a separate issue. Like that's not the studios using AI, that is the AI companies themselves. So I thought that was interesting, just like on the horizon, keeping that in mind of like, it's going to have to be an ongoing conversation, and these deals are going to probably have to be revisited every once in a while as things develop and change and as AI develops and changes. Okay, so JJK, I don't know if we're at the beginning of the Shibuya arc, the middle. I don't know where we're at. Okay, so we saw the seal collapse itself and do its thing. That is extremely haunting. Like I thought about that for a long time after the episode. Like, oh no. I have no predictions for all I know is everything bad is going to happen. So whatever happens in the Shibuya incident, it's not the end.
No, there's more things that happen.
So some people have to survive.
People will survive. This isn't.
The way people are talking about it, it's like.
Well, yeah, it'll feel like a bit of a reset because I think major characters we're probably going to lose.
I also am like, maybe they lose. Like maybe they lose, and the next arc begins like in this new world, and they're having to like figure out
what to do next. I don't know what happens later on in the show or even in the manga, but what I do know is so far, if people were not looking at Yuki as like a fanatic and were actually trying to listen to what Geto was saying before he sort of went off the rails, I don't think we get a Shibuya arc. Like if you were actually dealing with root causes, with curses and how we can control them, I think if the people in charge of Jujutsu Kaisen were listening to some of those people, a lot of things could have been avoided. And I get the sense that after this loss, there is that sort of come to Jesus moment where we're like finally going to be able to consider the possibility that there have to be things that get done. And it feels very reminiscent of the real world. Like it's like humans just don't know how to be proactive, and especially people in charge, they do not know how to be proactive in solving problems. Like there's an irony of it where one of the main people who spoke about fighting root causes, even though where he ended up was wrong, he was trying to fight root causes, right? He had some internal struggles that he was dealing with, but prior to that, like justifiably so, like I could understand where he was coming from. There is irony of that person is being controlled by the thing that he was trying to eliminate. It's frustrating because the writer's very in tune with what a lot of young people feel like they're having to deal with. Like, I know we talked a little bit about school shootings before, but like, I keep getting reminded of things like that, or like what we just saw in New York City with climate change and what's happening in Manhattan. It's like, again, root causes, people in power are refusing to look at this and say, maybe we can do something before everything turns into shit. What did you think of what Gojo said to Geto there?
Like, how long are you gonna let this thing control you?
Yeah.
It reminded me of what you said last week about how Geto was his only like weakness. And so like the power that Geto had, like not over Gojo, but kind of like, that he sees him or hears his voice and immediately like he like freezes. And also now that we know what they meant by over a minute in his mind, like the fact that is the thing that made it so that he was sealed. Like if he hadn't reminisced
for a minute about their history.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like he would not have been able to physically be sealed. I feel like it shows how it also goes the other way too, of like, because this whole time Geto's body has been used by this thing, and from what we can see, there's been no resistance. And then Gojo says something. It's like their connection is like, it just goes beyond space-time. I mean, literally beyond death, because like he's dead.
Yeah. Like
it's just it's like innate that even his body on its own without any life in it responded. I think it just really goes to show their bond, but also it brought up something very interesting that I wonder if it will come up again in the future, where the brain was like, Mahito, you were wrong. Like, it's actually, the soul doesn't come before the body. The body is a part of the soul and the soul is a part of the body. And that's like why this is possible. And then Mahito was like, does that have to be a universal truth? Like, how come the world can't operate differently for me based on my curse than it operates for you based on yours?
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, so each curse is its own world view. That feels significant, and I feel like we'll be coming back to that, because that's like, I'm sorry, what do you mean? Like,
but even on like a more philosophical level, that makes complete sense when you think about like what curses are created from, like the negative emotions that human beings are experiencing, that's going to be tied to your worldview. And it's not going to be universal. Like what pain has been like for me in my life is going to be different for someone else.
Yeah.
You know, and so the rules, how things went about, the social dynamics that are sort of woven into what created those feelings for me is going to be different for other people. You know?
Yeah. I'm certain we'll be coming back to that.
For sure.
Because that's like a big shift in the rules.
Yes. Just to sort of stay on Gojo and Geto for a second, because it definitely feels like since season 2, that has felt like the core piece of the show, at least emotionally. It has
Gojo
sort of served,
and Geto.
Yeah, it sort of served as
since
like,
that's been revealed.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like the friendship that Gojo and Geto have like on screen with the animation is just like refreshing. You know, like there's definitely some queer people that look at their relationship and can sort of see themselves in that, and like more power to them. I have no weight in that. Obviously, me being a cishet man, like I don't know if I can understand their perspective in the same way that them. From my own perspective, it's always healthy to like see two what I would perceive straight men like having a very strong like, but yet like very intimate relationship between the two of them. Mm-hmm. You know, like very platonic, but the intimacy is real. And I think that's what a lot of people gravitated towards Gojo and Geto, because that is not always something that is done. They just deeply care about each other. Like even throughout the intro and outro, like there are multiple moments where when you watch, they're always with you. They're like connected at the hip, right? And I do feel like sometimes those sort of emotions run into conflict with how a lot of men see what masculinity is like supposed to look like. Even like simple gestures. When that kid came up to Geto when he was having his existential crisis and he was like, hey, I'm about to go on my trip. And he was like, do you want me to bring you back like food? And he was like, salty or sweet, and Geto was like, bring back something sweet because I know Gojo's gonna want to eat some of my food. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thoughtfulness is rare because that is seen too feminine to be a part of what men see as appropriate friendships that are platonic. It's something that's only supposed to be connected to things that you, or relationships that you are like romantically involved in. And I do feel like that is part of the problem that I feel like a lot of men are going through right now. A lot of us do not have that many platonic friendships of the same sex where intimacy is present. A lot of men don't have as much friends as men, I guess, in society used to, let's say 30, 40 years ago. And I think there's a lot of variables in that. But I think when you try to touch on what could be a possible solution of like, yo, there is a way for us to have more like intimate friendships that are still platonic, and there's a lot of value in that. And I feel like whenever that sort of is brought up, you just sort of see men associate femininity to like same-sex attraction. But there's a lot of beauty in having a platonic friendship with a guy that there's some intimacy in, like being able to hug your male friend and be like, yo, I love you. That's real, man. Like, because they're going through the same thing you're going through. Like, it can be hard on guys in this world right now. And I think that is part of why I'm watching it and I'm like, it's just kind of refreshing. They don't really hold back on like physical touch, like especially Gojo. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's riding on the bike behind Geto on one of the scenes in, I think in the intro, you riding on the bike of a motorcycle, like a guy would look at you like, yo, bro, like that's kind of weird. Like you ride on the back of a man's bike, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. But like if we keeping it a stack, them two the realest dudes in the show. Like, who, you know what I'm saying? That has been refreshing. I've been thinking about that for the last couple of weeks for sure, especially when you take into what you were mentioning with the bond that those two have, where if you were to see their friendship as platonic, that's a strong bond where even after death, Geto hears Gojo's voice and he's willing to fight against one of the strongest curses ever. Come on, man. How are you not like in awe of that? Like, that's incredible.
And now that you bring that up, they they did such a good job of laying the foundation of that friendship and the depth of that friendship in like the little moments.
Yeah.
It's also just makes it all the more tragic. One thing I always think about that sort of illustrates how like even after the fallout they remained so connected is in the movie was JJK0.
Yes.
The movie, after they get Geto and he's like about to die, and he's like, you sent those kids here knowing that I would beat them and it would make him mad enough. The kid with the bond to that demon.
Yeah.
He was like, it would make him mad enough to fight me. That's kind of cruel. And Gojo says, no, I trusted you. Like, I trusted that somebody with your morals and your character wouldn't kill these young sorcerers.
Right.
And I was like, he made a key decision, like a key strategic decision based on his trust in the moral character of this person who is his opposition in the moment. But because of how close their friendship is and how well he knows him, he knows even though you and I are on very different sides of this, like we completely disagree on this morally. We are not on the same page. I still have trust in who you are as a person.
That's profound.
It's profound, and also it's like kind of unheard of in our climate.
It feels oxymoronic.
It does, and I think a lot of us, and sometimes it's justified,
Yeah.
But I do think that a lot of us struggle to see the humanity and I guess like the possible good parts of someone's character when they disagree with us on certain things.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like there's definitely certain things that like if we disagree on this, like we can't be cool.
Yeah.
But also I do think like we're quick to like see a comment that somebody says online or see it, you know, like just take things like that and run with it and like write off every other aspect of that person.
Yeah. Geto and Gojo know that each other are not on the same side. Like, I mean, Gojo ends Geto in that moment.
Oh, yeah, that's
You know
true.
what I'm saying? They went their separate ways. So
but they still saw the humanity in each other.
Exactly. The show isn't saying because Gojo loves Geto so much, he looks past the clear immoral perspectives that he has on the world right now. He's just simply saying there's still a human
and I still
behind all of that.
Care for them.
Right.
Even if we cannot be in each other's lives anymore. Like we have to go our separate ways. And I do think that is missing, especially online. I think there's a lot of dehumanization that happens on both parts. For a lot of people, that's the place where they have the most chance of interacting with somebody who believes something different than them, because a lot of people like live in proximity with, work in proximity with people who agree with them just because of, you know, there's lots of reasons why. Not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that online, sometimes when people are confronted with people who think differently than them, they don't always know what to do. And oftentimes it results in extreme dehumanization. Like we saw it a lot with like COVID, when everything with COVID was going down. There was a lot of dehumanization happening on both sides. You had anti-vaxxers who were, you know, saying horrible things like when people died and, you know, making like conspiracy theory posts about like complete strangers, not famous people, just regular everyday people, like who lost people, blaming them for getting the vaccine, etc., etc. On the flip side of that, though, you did have people, presumably on the left, who were like, when people died of COVID, acted like they deserved it. Like when people who didn't believe in COVID or didn't get the vaccine died of COVID, they essentially had the opinion of like, well, that's what you get.
Yeah.
Like that happens a lot. Like it even came up like, I gotta check myself on this a little bit. I think it is a little bit different. Like when you're talking about people in positions of power, like it is different because just like the dynamics are different. But like that guy is having strokes on live TV. Like that, like he's not well, right? And like I've been kikiing. I'm not gonna lie. Like I have been like,
Mr. McConnell.
Yeah, like he's on his way out. You know, like you know, like, I'm not gonna fault anybody. I understand the perspective of like, because of who he is and the power that he has and the, you know,
a lot of damage he's done.
The damage that he's done. I'm not coming at you for that. I'm not gonna die on that hill. This is something though for me that I thought about, that I'm like, do I though want to do that for my own? I don't know.
Another reason why I love Gojo and Geto's relationship between the two of them is that there's both a lot of beauty in it, and then there's a lot of criticisms that we should take and learn from as well. One of those is just a trait of just like toxic masculinity in general, of internalizing your feelings, sort of suppressing it. And then what is birthed out of that is something that is extremely problematic. And that is precisely what happens to Geto, right? We don't see a moment where he's attempting to healthily process what he's experiencing with the people who he's closest to.
The only thing that makes me pause is that conversation that he had with the girl,
Yuki,
where he kind of did just like put it all out there and say like, I just haven't decided yet.
I think talking with Gojo could have helped.
Okay.
I think Gojo knew Geto a lot better than Yuki ever did.
Yeah.
And I think that would have grounded him a little bit more than the way that she left things. Because I don't think she was thinking about the weight of the words that she was saying to him and how there could have been some course correction when he made that suggestion. Because she doesn't strongly condemn that idea.
No, I think because she doesn't shame him for thinking it, is the way that I took that conversation. Of like, in the situation that you are in and the frustration that you are feeling, I'm not going to shame you for having that really dark thought. And also, I cannot tell you where to go on this. Like, you're going to have to decide that for yourself.
But I don't know if I like that. I feel like because she didn't choose that, to me, that implies she has a moral stake in this fight. Like, I don't think she agrees, even though she's saying it should be his choice, you know?
I don't know. I definitely don't think she agrees with him, but I do think that she does agree that he has to decide it for himself. Because she also acknowledges, like, I no longer have a really solid solution. I had these ideas that are, like, not fully fleshed out and that are kind of difficult to, right? That I understand why you are thinking it, because that is like a surefire thing. Like, that's going to solve the problem 100%. It will work.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like the word. It's just like obviously a terrible thing to do, but like I understand why you went there. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the right thing to do is. I don't know.
Well, they're dealing with something with a lot of depth here. These are negative emotions that all human beings are dealing with, which is the root of every single problem that humanity has dealt with since its existence. That is a tall task to try to give like one sort of binary solution to.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm like, I mean, Gojo and Geto did eventually talk on the street. And like, maybe it was too late by then. Maybe if it had happened earlier. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Because at that, he's not checking in on Geto. He's chastising him. He's like, your plan is insane. Are you really trying to do X, Y, and Z? Like, you trying to like kill all non-curse users? I think, and granted, like, Gojo, he ain't no like, he's not like the most emotionally intelligent person.
I was going to say, I think that is very likely what his response would have been at any point in time.
But it's not like he was entering that conversation to like understand him on a deeper level.
No, but I also wonder if Geto didn't go to him because he knew that Gojo would not try to understand. That his immediate response would have been to say like, are you insane?
I think there's also some resentment because he's like, you've got all this power and you could be doing more. Like, he even calls him kind of arrogant.
Yeah, because Geto says like, you can't even do it. Like, it's to say like, it's not possible for you to do what you're trying to do. And he says, it's arrogant for you to say that because you could do it, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am curious to then really know what Gojo's plan is. And this is not me siding with Geto, but if you disapprove of Geto's plan and now you're currently trying to change the system by bringing up younger sorcerers that have more empathetic and progressive ideas of the world. What is your solution?
To me, I thought of it as like he is trying to push the world of jujutsu to think more outside of the box. Like when he's talking to them about Sukuna and Yuji, he's like, this is actually like an opportunity for us, like to understand something. I think that is what he is trying to do, is like he's trying to push them to be like, we push the boundaries a little bit more to open up the doors of possibility for what they can do.
Yeah, and I also think one of them is this idea of like a sort of communal approach in solving problems. And because like the idea obviously of like JJK, like of Jujutsu Kaisen, is like individuals have their own like curse ability. They individually have their own curses that create their own worldviews based off of what was said by the brain in Mahito. And that's like you see Fushiguro kind of deal with that, like trying to deal with problems on his own. Like obviously like Yuji has like, he's tried to do things like in certain instances, but even like Mekamaru did that, tried to deal with problems by himself. Geto tried to deal with the problems by himself. I'm forgetting another example. Oh, even with Utah, where in JJK 0, he's like, I just want to be by myself essentially forever. And Gojo was like, that's a really dark and sad way to exist. I think that is also part of what he's trying to get at. Like, you cannot solve these like structural problems by yourself. Mm-hmm. All right, y'all. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.